welcome to this video on stressed, anxious and depressed youth brought to you by Arise Family. My name is Robin Jacobs and I'm a clinical psychologist by training. And Arise Family is an NGO based in Cape Town, South Africa that works in strengthening and preserving families, children and youth. We have years of experience working with young people in schools as well as in the family strengthening programs we run at our center. And we know firsthand how serious this problem of anxiety and depression in our young people is becoming. We wanted to create this video to encourage you as caregivers to feel like you have the knowledge and support you need to support the young people in your lives effectively, and to bring you the latest resilience and strength-based research from a trauma-informed lens. The first thing I want to say is that we need to see mental health as a continuum, with disease or distress at one end of the scale and health at the other. We all slide up and down this continuum at various points in our life, depending on both our genes and the things that are happening inside of our brain, our body, our hormone levels, as well as what's happening in our environment. So we might move into a state of distress or depression at the loss of a loved one, but then over time and by applying specific coping techniques and strategies, we move more towards the health side of the continuum. Some of us may find that we spend a lot of our life towards the scale of distress or disease, while others of us can remain relatively on the health side without much effort. But there are all things that we can do, strategies and coping skills that we can learn to help us move from a state of distress into one that is more healthy. We also need to think about what do we mean by these terms stress, anxiety, and depression. Firstly, stress is a normal response to challenges. It's one we've all faced at various times, and it is even needed in small doses in order to motivate us and give us the energy that we need to perform tasks effectively. But when stress continues for too long, when we feel prolonged stress, it erodes away at our ability to cope and is definitely unhealthy. This is the type of stress that leads a lot of our students into feeling distressed, unable to cope, like there is too much bearing down on their shoulders. But just what is causing stress in our teens today? Well, teenagers today are expected to do more and achieve more than they ever have before. They often have very full schedules, and the level of performance required from them in academic and social and sporting arenas is just too much for them to bear very often. Often, our students talk about feeling anxious or worried, and so we also need to understand, what do we mean when we talk about anxiety? Anxiety is a heightened state of fear or worry, which is something we all experience at some point in our lives. However, when our anxiety becomes so bad that we're not able to function in the normal tasks we do on a day-to-day basis, we start to talk about an anxiety disorder. Anxiety is an emotion characterized by worry and tension. People with anxiety disorders may avoid certain situations that make them feel more anxious. They may constantly be worried by intrusive thoughts, or start to experience physical changes in their diet, in their sleep patterns, in their energy levels, as well as their blood pressure. Anxiety is serious. It is incredibly debilitating, and we need to help our teens to develop skills that can help them combat the worry that they're feeling. Depression is persistent sadness or hopelessness about life circumstances. Again, this is something that we all experience at some point in our life. But when our depressive feelings become so strong that we're unable to function daily, that we lose interest in all activities, we start to avoid relationships, and there's just a persistence, a heaviness to the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness, it's time to seek help. It is then that we start talking about a major depressive episode or a clinical depression. And these symptoms, driven by both things happening in the environment as well as our genes, will affect our eating and our sleeping patterns. It'll affect our mood and interest in all sorts of activities. It is something, again, that we need to take seriously, as unresolved depression can also lead to thoughts of harm and suicide. Now, stress, anxiety, and depression don't necessarily happen in isolation. They too exist on a continuum, with some people feeling more anxious and others feeling more depressed, and some experiencing a combination of these two things. We can put signs and symptoms of anxiety and depression into three broad categories. And these are the things we want to encourage you as caregivers, as parents, to look out for, both in your own lives and in the lives of the young people in your home. Firstly is that of behavioral symptoms, changes in the way your teen is behaving, loss of interest in activities, avoidance of certain people or things, not being able to eat or eating too much, not being able to sleep or sleeping too much. Behavioral symptoms can also include things like irritability and quarreling. When you're feeling so anxious and worried about everything, you can be short and snappy and irritable. Depression can also manifest as irritability. And in small children, we may see things like clinginess to parents, inability to leave them alone, or bedwetting and a change in their normal milestones that they've already developed, such as potty training, going back to a previous state. These can all be signs that something is wrong with the child in your home. We also need to be on the lookout for emotional symptoms, as we said, irritability, worry, fear, sadness, hopelessness, helplessness. These emotional signs, when they carry on day in and day out over a period of weeks, is something to be concerned about and to try to seek help for the people in your lives. And then we have cognitive symptoms. It may be that the child in your home is experiencing difficulty concentrating because they're worried all the time, or they're having intrusive thoughts, or their mind is just moving at a slower pace due to the depression that they're feeling. They may experience difficulty concentrating, difficulty with memory tasks, or problem-solving abilities. So any change that you're starting to see in your child, in their behavior, in the way that they usually cognitively function, in their mood, are things to take seriously and to start to seek help. There's also physical symptoms associated with anxiety and depression. As we said, there are changes in eating and sleeping patterns, but there's also changes in energy, a general fatigue, or in young children, they often complain of headaches and stomach aches, which are symptoms of often emotional difficulties that they're going through. Let's talk about labels and why we diagnose mental health disorders. There's a lot of stigma and dogma around being categorized as having depression or anxiety, and I know many of you may not want that for your child. But I want to point out that one of the reasons, perhaps the main reason, that we in the medical field do try to label something as a disorder is a classification, so we're all talking about a common set of symptoms and language when we work together in order to help your child. But it's also a recognition that the level of stress, the level of depression or anxiety that your child is experiencing is above what is considered normal and requires specialized intervention in order to help them. I said at the beginning that we were going to look at all of this through a trauma lens. And one of the things we need to consider when we look at the increasing incidence of anxiety and depression in young people and in the general population today is the evidence that shows how trauma impacts a child's developing brain and their ability to develop emotional regulation skills. Now, traumatic experiences are becoming increasingly prevalent in everyone's lives, but we need to consider how our children and people who are struggling with mental health difficulties may have episodes of trauma in their past. Trauma are things like neglect and abuse that is all too common in our country, or the experience of loss. Even a divorce or moving home could be a traumatic experience depending on the child involved. Then there's things like violence, both in the home, whether it be inter-partner violence or community violence that a child is witnessing or experiencing. All of these are traumatic and they affect the wiring of the brain of the child. They can affect the ability of that child to learn resilience, to develop emotional regulation skills, and it can predispose a child to mental health concerns, particularly as they grow older. It sets up a vulnerability that we need to counter through increasing positive factors, the strengths and resilience that is so part of the work we do at Arise. When you consider the immense stress that our students are facing, entrance exams, matriculation exams, more so than at any other time in history, they are feeling the pressure to do well, to succeed, and this pressure is exacerbating the mental health difficulties that they are feeling. Research is also very clear that approximately 1 in 7 individuals between the ages of 10 and 19 will experience some sort of anxiety or depressive episode at some point. It accounts for 15% of the global burden of disease amongst young people. When we look at our own country, the statistics are just as glum. In a study done in the Western Cape, we found that teens between the ages of 10 and 14 are experiencing record highs of anxiety and depression. Between 10 and 20% of all teens in this study could be diagnosed with a mental health disorder. Suicide is the third leading cause of death globally amongst 15 to 19-year-olds. And studies that have come out after the pandemic of COVID-19 are showing that there are record levels of anxiety and depression amongst our teens, way higher levels than there were in the pre-pandemic era. This is a serious problem and one we need to think about. How can we support and help our teens to grow and thrive and develop the skills they need to succeed in life? So as a caregiver, just what can you do? There are 2 points that we want to highlight. The first is to create a supportive and open communication environment, and the second is to develop coping skills. It's important to establish open communication with your team, a place where the young people in your life can talk about the challenges and problems that they're facing, where they can express their feelings without fear of judgment, where there's consistency and predictability that helps them to feel safe. Creating an environment where your teens feel validated in their emotions and they know that they're not alone. To support your teen in developing healthy coping mechanisms, it's important to teach them the skills that they're going to need. Teach them mindfulness, whether it's journaling or meditation or prayer. Teach them how to express their feelings in safe ways. Teach them deep breathing techniques or relaxation guides. Show them creative outlets for their emotions and support them as they explore these things and learn what works for them. Teach your teen about positive self-talk and how to reframe negative thoughts that come their way. Show them how to develop a growth mindset and an ability to believe they can overcome their problems. In short, the message you're trying to convey to your teen is it's okay to feel the way you feel. It's not okay to get stuck there, but we're in this together and we'll figure it out together. You are not alone. It's important to recognize that there are times when additional help and support might be needed. Sometimes we need to get in the professionals. So when you're starting to feel like your teen is experiencing these persistent problems that are just not getting any better, when there's pervasive feelings of hopelessness or worry, it's time to get the professionals involved. Seek counseling or therapy, which can help you know how to support your child as well as help your child to learn the skills that they need. Or consider going and speaking to your doctor, who may be able to point you in the direction of what sorts of pharmacology might be helpful for the feelings that your child is experiencing. Now for a little bit of homework. I want you to think about a time your child experienced stress, depression, or anxiety. Think about the symptoms they were experiencing and a little around what was going on in your life at the time. How did you respond to these feelings? And listening to all the things we've discussed in this video today, what might you do differently the next time? There is a worksheet below that will help you with this exercise. In closing, we want to encourage you in your caregiving and the way you respond when your child is going through a difficult time. It is with your support and consistency that your child will overcome the challenges they are facing and the emotional difficulties that they are experiencing. We also want to encourage you to keep learning, keep reading and talking and discussing these things. This is how we will overcome the stigma and dogma that is associated with mental health difficulties. And it's how you will grow in order to support your child even better. So here's your homework. We want you to think of one resilience building strategy that you can start to implement in your daily life this week and write it down. We want you to share that goal with someone and schedule it into your diary. What is one thing you can do to build the resilience in your family? We want to thank you for your interest in this video and for allowing Arise Family to walk a small part of your parenting journey with you. We encourage you to contact us if you have any questions, and you can either email us at training@arisefamily.org or contact us on social media. Visit our website, follow along with us to see what we're doing, and we hope to see you in one of our workshops very soon.